lay your weary head to rest.
Concert when I was 11 years old.
Shut up. That's a pretty good first concert.
At Broad Days.
Sweet.
My mom didn't care for my well-being very much.
Those are the good old days.
Right.
Just go play. Come back when it's dark. Okay, let's continue on. Page 430, if you are following along in that little online book. But we're going to sync that red footage with the normal footage. So, like I said, in video track 1, he's talking about we're rolling the camera and it's actually rolling now, and it's pretty meta, that whole bit. So, in the timeline, we are going to play or scrub ahead until he says we're actually rolling right now, which is super meta. So I'm just going to give you a guesstimate of 2:14:00, and then I'm going to see if that's a reasonable point.
It's actually rolling right now, which is kind of cool, which is super meta.
So yeah, that's in that zone where he says all that. Somewhere in there. Go back to the R3D bin. We're going to open in the source monitor the Prod Poolside Crew clip from the red files. So that's this second camera that's further away. So the one that we see right here in the program monitor is the guy holding the normal DSLR camera, and where this shot is taken is further back with that high-res camera. Open at the source monitor, we are there. If we were to play this clip, there's no sound, but eventually we are going to look to when he starts to say meta. So what we need to do is first zoom in. So in the fit to window in the source monitor, choose at least 100%, maybe even a little more. I'll go 150. And then you need to use these little scroll bars here to get it to where we can see the guy in the blue. I don't know what his name is, Adam or Jeff. Adam, I think, where we can see him. And we're going to be watching his mouth for when he says meta. In the source monitor, it is around 14:33, 16:24. And if you go back and forth, you can tell where he's saying meta right there. Meta, meta. You guys see that? If you're scrubbing back and forth. So 14:33, 16:24. At this point, we're going to put a marker on this source clip. So letter M, it's going to drop in a marker. Go back to your timeline playhead and take your playhead to 2:17:20. Oops, that didn't work. 2:17:20. And you can see up here his lips are starting to say the in meta. That's, if we were to scrub through this and listen, that's, whoops, that's where he's starting to say the
Super meta.
That's the super meta. I know. 2:17:20. Got to have my playhead there. Okay. Now what we are going to do. We're going to drag this clip from the source monitor. So we're going to drag on the little, either drag from it or the little video clip. We're going to bring it down into our timeline. And we're going to put it on video track 3. And what we want is that layer marker to snap to our playhead. And we can't see it until we let go. And then the green little layer marker shows up and I see that it's not quite right. I got to shift it a little more. Shift it, there. Pretty good. So the layer marker of when he's saying meta is right on the playhead. And that's where his mouth says meta in that B-roll as well. So select the R3D file up on video track 3, the one that we just brought in. And remember, this is still too big physically. So with it selected, go up to the effect control panel and go to the scale option in the motion family and change it to 67% also. It's going to bring it back down. And go back to your timeline and adjust it backwards to 2:14:10. And this is where down in your track 1, Adam says it's actually rolling right now.
It's actually rolling right now.
So that's what's going on at that point. 2:14:10. Switch to the selection tool, letter V, and we're going to snap the head of this clip to the playhead. So we're going to shorten the endpoint, pull it to the right until it snaps there. So when he starts to say, we're actually rolling right now, that's when it cuts up to that B-roll. It goes from his interview scene up to the B-roll. We're going to grab the tail end of this clip with our selection tool, and we're going to pull it back until it snaps with the videos starting on track 2 right below it. So that clip stops when we go to video 2 down here. So this is what this clip now looks like.
We're like approaching the final shots here. We're getting a wide shot, which is looks fantastic. Can't complain.
Final stretch. Final stretch.
It's actually rolling right now, which is kind of cool.
See how we
Which is
cut to
super
that?
Meta.
Pretty cool, huh? Cut to camera 2. So when you guys start doing your projects, you should have 2 or 3 cameras rolling at the same time to do all this fun stuff. You're like, whatever. This sounds horrible. All right. Adding the final red clip. All right. The final one that we're going to add needs to be synced to audio, but it's going to be synced to the vocal part of the audio, not the instrumental clip. So the vocal part is in track 3. Double click the red file called Prod Music Video Raw 02 to open it in our source monitor. And change the zoom level to fit so we can see the whole screen option that we have. And I'll play out this clip. There's no sound, but they're jamming around. And at some point, dude on the keyboard swings his hair. He's popping, he's bopping. Where do you swing it? Come on, dude. There we go. Here it comes. Whoosh! So that's a little dramatic piece that we're going to cue something up and have some slow-mo going when he whooshes his hair. No audio. The natural endpoint of this is going to sync with the music clip in the final sequence marker and the timeline. So back at your timeline, if you need to zoom out a bit to see all these different tracks. The audio track that is actually singing is this one down on track 3, and that marker is right where it all starts. So, all right, we are going to something seems a little off here. I feel like we didn't finish this one. Something's not right. I don't know when we didn't do this, so I'm just going to fix it. So at the end of the movie, track 3, we have Prod Music Video Raw 01. Do you guys see it extending over top of those 4 clips on track 2?
Yeah.
Let's pull it, the endpoint back so that it stops, and then we cut back to track 2. So if we scrub through this, we do see these guys playing, and then it cuts back to the confetti sweeping and all that stuff. All right. Put your playhead at the end of the clips in track 2. The timeline I have is 2:37:00. So it's where the video 2 tracks end. And we're going to take this clip we have up in our source monitor and we're going to drag it down onto track 3 and snap it to, floating beach ball. Snap it to the head of it to that point. Oh, don't you dare crash. It's like snow day, please crash. All right, so there it is. It gets snapped right there. Select that clip, go into your effect controls and scale it down to 67% so it actually fits. Now we're going to see if it works with the music going on below. And I have a bad feeling about this, to be honest. But let's unlock and unmute track 3 of audio so that we can actually hear it playing. And let's see if this synced up. Well, it worked. It worked. You can see him sort of saying all that stuff.
He uses a lot of autos. Like that wasn't human.
It's daytime disco.
Yeah.
Of course they do.
That wasn't even
Can you pull
human.
this
All right.
Nope.
Down in our timeline, take your playhead to where Jeff flips his hair at 2:50:20. There's Jeffy. He's gonna flip. See? Woo, woo, woo. I love doing that. 2:50:20. Take the razor tool and cut the red clip right here. Clip. And we're going to manually enter the speed for the second part of this clip so that there's a sudden but seamless transfer to slow motion. With your selection tool, right-click on this second part of the clip and choose speed duration. There she be. Take it to 50% with none of the check boxes marked and click OK. With your selection tool, we're going to grab the tail end of this clip and we're going to trim it to the point where Jeff walks out of the scene. So as we're pulling it back, we're seeing the scene up here in I'm still clicking and pulling. We're seeing the scene up there. So when he walks out of the scene, that's where we want to trim it to. And it's at about 3:01:10. So I'm just going to let go there and see how I did. If the timeline playhead is at 3:01:10, that's where we want to trim it to. But really it's a visual thing. When he starts to walk out of the scene, that's where we want to trim it to. So we made it slow motion, and when he walks off the scene, we stop it. Let's mute and lock audio track 3 again. I'm going to play it for you one more time so you can see the hair flip in the slow-mo. Okay, right here is where we're going to have the hair flip. Wow, isn't that cool? Bye, Jeff. We're quite the cinematographers, aren't we? This is pretty cool. Telling stories. All right, lock and mute 3 if you didn't already. And we'll do a file save as. That was page 436. That. All right, we're going to do 2 more topics that won't take literally about 20 minutes left, and then I will get you onto some work time. We're going to add some transitions. You guys remember doing that back with the theft unexpected? Yeah. All right. I had a few issues with this, playing through this, so I hope it works better than when I was practicing. All right, so there's tons of effects. So just to be clear, because this can be a little confusing, when we click on a clip and we go to the effect control panel, that's where we can tweak literally all the things that are happening, how it's positioned, where it's sized. Down here, there's an actual effects panel, not effect controls. So down in the project panel family, click to open the effects window. And if you don't see it, you might need to click on the double arrows to twirl that open. And here's where all these built-in Premiere transitions live. We saw these last time. If you don't know where it lives, but you know that there's a dissolve transition in that search bar, type in dissolve. And you're going to see anything with the word dissolve is going to spin open. So there's a video effect, a transition that is block dissolve, and there's a video transition. There's a whole bunch of them. Cross dissolve is the one that's got the blue around it. That means that's the default. And if you ever hit the default button, that's what you're going to get, is a cross dissolve. All right. Take your timeline playhead to 1:20:06. This is between prod monitor Adam Phillip and prod shooting Jeff Dancer, whatever. I would zoom in a little bit so that you have lots of room of those two clips. If they're teeny tiny and you're trying to drop a transition in between them that's teeny tiny, it's going to be hard. So zoom in, have your playhead in between those two clips. In order for transitions to work, they both need to have sufficient overlapping trimmed frames. So there needs to be more at the beginning that we're not seeing and more at the end that we're not seeing that can mesh and go over each other. If there aren't frames that we can do this with, we have to be creative and make it work. So the second of these two clips, this prod Phillip Dancer, if you double click on it and bring it up into the source window, and then you zoom out of this source window, you're going to see that it starts, the end point is at the very beginning of the clip. The out point, there's plenty here, but there is nothing at the end point. There's nothing we can pull to the left and gain more clips. This is truly the start point of this. So because this one can't be pulled back to melt over the two, we're going to have to extend the other one. So the prod Adam, this first clip, this one is going to have to extend its out point to work. So the rolling edit, letter N, takes you to the rolling edit. We're going to hover it over the edit point in the timeline, so where our playhead is, and we're going to apply a roll edit by 6 frames. So we're going to pull this endpoint 6 frames to the right. So watch the little tooltip underneath, and when it says 0006, let go. So it kind of looks like it bumped it down, but this is actually allowing us to have some 6 frames, which is 1/4 of a second, of dissolving. Go back down at the lower left to your effects panel where you have all of your transitions available. And we're going to drag the cross dissolve to this current edit point so that the transition ends at the edit point. So drag cross dissolve and bring it here. This is where I had problems last time. There it shows up. Wait till you see it like physically show up in here and you see the green. So it's actually starting at the edit point.
Try to drag it.
Yeah, but I thought it was supposed to end.
I lied.
Oh, okay.
The book lied.
Gotcha.
It doesn't. It can't. So this cross dissolve is right here. I'll show you what this looks like. It's going to be slow. So here's the original scene. Now we're starting in the cross dissolve. So with over these 6 frames, as I'm scrubbing through, and now we're fully into that other one. If we watch this live, it's going to happen super fast.
Sort of performing.
Okay. So that's what we just did. We put a cross dissolve here. Let's use your selection tool and click to select the cross dissolve itself. And if we do that, we see a duration. At least mine has an 18 frame duration. The tooltip showed up. We don't want that. So with that selected, we're going to go up to the control, effect control panel up here, and where it says duration of 18 frames, that's too much. We only want it to be an 06, a 6-second duration. So evidently the default for dissolve is set at 18, and that's why it came in at 18. So choose that at 6 seconds. It makes your cross dissolve a lot smaller. And now the ending probably does line up where we expected it to be. So if we track through this now, it's over 6 frames. It goes from one scene to the other. Take your playhead to 237.00. And this is the start. It goes from video track 2 to 3 with the raw track on 3. This raw track, if we were to open it in the source monitor, we would find out that it doesn't have any extra frames to pull its in point backwards to do an overlap this way. There's nothing here. So we have to extend the out point of this lower one. And how we know that, again, is by looking in our source monitor and seeing if there are video frames at the in point or out point that we can use that still exist, that we haven't trimmed, or that we did trim but that we can use. All right, take your selection tool, Prod Confetti Lyrics down on track 2, select it, and extend its out point 12 frames to the right. So again, watch that duration go up to 12 frames. Now we have that crossover, and we're going to be able to do a cross dissolve there. But what we can't do is, these are on 2 different tracks. We can't apply a cross dissolve at a kind of a kitty corner angle here. They have to be on the same track. So we're going to take the Prod Confetti Lyrics, and we're going to move it straight up so that those last 12 frames overwrite the one after it. So we're literally pulling it straight up to track 3. And then we're going to take the cross dissolve and bring it over again. So drag that over in here. And we can have it so that it's over the 2 like this. Prod, the head of prod. So get that to go. And again, it's too long. The duration of it is probably too long. If we select it, we'll see up in our effect control panel that this is 1 whole second. We just want to change this to 12 frames. It's going to be much smaller. And there's that transition. You go from sweeping up confetti to seeing the guys playing in the background over 12 frames. So across dissolve, you need overlap. Like fade to black or fade in, you don't, right? There's nothing going on there. All right, do a file save as. That was 42. 442. And we're going to create some effects in Premiere Pro that are going to make sense as we move on along with this project. There's tons of things we can do here. We can do color correcting, blurring, sharpening, texturizing, all sorts of different effects right within Premiere. A lot of these we can do in After Effects, and we'll do there as well. The color correcting, we're going to save until Chapter 8, because once we get our movie all done and set, that's when we're going to go back, and if one scene is too red, or we want to turn one black and white or whatever, we do it at the end. That's like one of the last things you do is color correct, so that the whole movie makes sense together. So we're going to apply a clip called Posterize Time to one of these. So in our timeline, let's take our playhead, 1:21:16. So this is the start of Prod Monitor Dancer. I'm going to play the clip, and we're going to notice that there's a lot of quick motion of the dancer. So here it is.
Some backup dancers.
Okay. So quick. Nee, 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 nee. That's it. A cool effect on a clip that has a lot of this quick motion is called posterized time effect. It basically makes it certain movements look kind of frozen in time or posterize the time. So go back to your lower effects panel, and in the field where we had done a search for dissolve, type in posterized time. And you'll see that it's a video effect, it's in time, and it's in posterized time. So select that clip, and then double click on that in the project panel or the effects panel down here. Before we do that, let's select this clip first. Yeah, we have to do that first. Make sure that we actually select, if your playhead is inside of it, it might have worked, but since our playhead was right at the start or the end of the previous clip, so select the clip called Prod Monitor Dancers, and then back in your effects panel, double click on Posterized Time. We don't really see anything, but if you noticed, if you have your effect control panel open at the top, it added a new line right down here at the bottom, and it says that there's a special effect, FX, of posterized time that has been added, and there are some options that we can do with it. So we're going to verify that it's here, and we're going to change the frame rate from 24 down to 6. So 24 is as fast as it normally is, 6 is going to be slower. And now here's what it looks like. I'll play it live.
Some backup dancers.
See how choppy it is? But it's back, it's like freezing, hip thrust, freeze, 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 whatever. That's what we did to it. That is the special effect. Teeny tiny, do you notice that down on this clip, we have a little FX right here in the corner? Depends on how much you're zoomed in. That's telling you that there's a special effect applied to this clip also. You see them every now and then, FX, FX, FX. All right, the last thing that we're going to do is at the end of this, the final red clip, at the very end of our production, we're going to put an After Effects motion graphic at the end. So maybe the title, the credits or something at the end. And if we go look at that footage, so the last raw footage, let's just zoom down the line here. So over all of this is where theoretically something is going. Maybe it's the credits or something. And you know how legibility and readability is tough when you got a background that's busy and always changing. So what we're going to do to this clip is we're going to apply a Gaussian blur. You guys remember that from Photoshop where it blurs it all? So it's going to be easier to read the type over top of it when we do that later. So Prod Music Vid Raw 02. Select that clip. Let's make sure I have the right one. Yep, 02 is the second one. Get my playhead down in there. So it's the last raw clip. Come over to your effects panel at the bottom, and in the search bar, type in Gaussian blur. Gaussian blur. And you can see it down here. Double click on that effect to apply it to the clip that we have highlighted. And in our effect controls panel up here, Gaussian blur shows up and it's twirled open with lots of options, including the blurriness. If you hover your mouse over the zeros and start doing how we did that scrubby finger thing, you can see here's 163 blur, here's 0 blur. So you can visually pull this blur to get it to where you want it to be. We're going to go with about a 30. So either type in 30 or drag out to about that point. And that's the amount of blur that we want so that our motion graphic can go on top of that in the future. File save as 446, and we shall pause at this point. This is where we will pick up next week. I don't have a clean file to give you next week. You have to be good through this. And then next week we will finish. We're going to add, we're going to put titles in Premiere. So on another track, video track 4, we're going to start putting type, and it's just going to be a transparent background with words, and the words are going to show up. So down here, when the people are talking, it's going to say their name and their title, what they do. So it's just going to superimpose over it. We're going to do stuff like that. And then at the end of next week's, we're actually going to be done with the Premiere part, and we're going to render it out. And then we jump into After Effects after spring break. And we do a couple of motion graphics and then bring them back in here. And then we color correct and fix the audio, and then we're done. Then you graduate. Bye. Done. Over. That's simple. So you have to be ready to start on chapter 4, 446 with this file next week, and we will pick up from here. Okay? The rest of the class is your